Share strong economic complementarities and have witnessed bilateral trade expanding rapidly in recent years. Since establishing diplomatic ties, two-way trade has grown from a modest $124 million to $6.59 billion in 2024, according to China's General Administration of Customs. In 2024, trade surged by over 24%, with Chinese exports rising more than 10% to $3.27 billion, and imports from Uruguay jumping nearly 43% to $3.32 billion. China is Uruguay's largest trading partner and the top buyer of its soybeans and wool. China mainly exports clothing, footwear, mobile phones, motorcycles, and air conditioners to the South American country. And its imports include beef, soybeans, pulp, wool, leather, meat, and edible offal and frozen fish. Uruguay is the first country from the Southern Common Market bloc of South America to participate in the Belt and Road Initiative. Han Han is a deputy research fellow at the Institute of Latin American Studies at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences. She says the initiative has helped promote Uruguay's economic modernization.
Well, for Uruguay, high-quality Belt and Road Initiative collaboration means a fundamental shift from seeking simple trade growth to promote sustainable and structured development. And I think 3 points is very important for this country. First, this means moving beyond commodity exports like beef and soybeans towards value-added partnership in agriculture technology. And second, the cooperation enhances Uruguay's strategic autonomy. This deepens ties with China strengthens its role as a bridge, allowing it to promote multilateralism and translate bilateral gains into regional influence. And the third and last is very important that high-quality Belt and Road cooperation it will promote Uruguay's economy modernization. This year is very important for Uruguay as it will play 3 important positive roles in Latin America and China's cooperation. First, Uruguay becomes a key coordinator within the Global South. Second, Uruguay is a pragmatic advocate for South-South cooperation and regional integration. And thirdly, Uruguay is leveraging its mutual presidential roles with pragmatic diplomacy to more closely integrate its own development with the common interests of China and Latin America.
China says it shares broad alignment with Russia on issues related to Japan, warning that Tokyo's remilitarization poses a serious threat to regional peace. These comments come after China's top diplomat Wang Yi met with Sergei Shoigu, Secretary of the Russian Federation Security Council. Beijing noted that landmark documents such as the Cairo Declaration, the Potsdam Proclamation, and Japan's instrument of surrender in World War II, and the Japanese Constitution clearly constrained Japan's military. However, China says that Japan has yet to fully break with its past behavior, reflected in the enshrinement of a Class A war criminals at the Yasukuni Shrine and attempts by right-wing forces to minimize its wartime aggression. China also pointed to Japan's rapid military expansion, including 14 consecutive years of rising defense spending, the development of long-range missiles, the conversion of destroyers into aircraft carrier-like platforms, and the relaxation of weapon export restrictions. Some Japanese officials have even openly advocated nuclear armament.
All of this demonstrates that Japan's acceleration toward remilitarization is not hypothetical, but a concrete reality, with clear pathways and actions already underway. History offers profound lessons. China, together with all peace-loving countries, must work jointly to curb the ambitions of Japanese right-wing forces pushing remilitarization and to safeguard the outcomes of World War II and the hard-won peace of the world.
A large fire has broken out in a shopping center west of the Iranian capital, Tehran. State media reports adding that firefighting teams were on the scene to extinguish it. The shopping center is a popular market area in the Iranian capital with shops and stalls covering 2,000 square meters. The cause remains unclear, and there have been no initial reports of casualties. The U.S. and Iran are set to hold nuclear talks on Friday in Istanbul. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi are due to meet. Representatives from Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and other nations will also participate. Iran says it's reviewing the details of the negotiations. In a post on social media platform X, President Pezeshkian said Tuesday he has instructed Araghchi to pursue fair and equitable negotiations, provided that a suitable environment exists free from threats and unreasonable expectations. Meanwhile, the U.S. continues to boost its naval deployments near Iran. The Chief of Staff of Iran's armed forces says Tehran is fully prepared to counter any military provocation. Araghchi says Tehran remains open to diplomacy, stressing talks must be based on mutual respect.
After the failure of this recent conspiracy, now they are the ones who are talking about diplomacy again. We have always been ready for diplomacy, provided that it is from an equal position, provided that it is for mutual respect and to secure different interests with the Iranian people. We must speak with respect. Whoever speaks with respect, you will respond with respect, and whoever speaks with threats and force will be responded to with the same language. We are ready for diplomacy, but they should know that diplomacy with threats, intimidation, and pressure is not compatible. Diplomacy has its own ideology.
Meanwhile, Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Ismail Baghei has called on the U.S. to lift the sanctions it has imposed in recent years.
In exchange for confidence building and addressing pretexts over concerns about Iran's nuclear program, surely our demand is the lifting of the unjust sanctions that have been imposed on the Iranian people in recent years. The issue we are dealing with now also includes threats, and certainly in any negotiation, in any diplomatic process, all of these must be addressed together.
As U.S.-Iranian tensions rise, many ordinary Iranians say they are paying the price, not only economically, but mentally as well. Sepra Saremi reports from Tehran.
On the news, you hear a lot of things about diplomacy, negotiations, and also war and possible U.S. strike on Iran. But on the ground, we see that Iranians are under a lot of pressure. In the past, there was just economic pressure, things like inflation, declining purchasing power, and also growing prices. But now there is also mental pressure on Iranians that every night they hear about possible use of strikes, and then they hear about diplomacy, so they are kind of confused.
Our life is stress. Every day there is anxiety and worry, and everything is just getting more expensive. Anything you buy, you have to buy it tomorrow for twice the price, and everyone's power has decreased. Income is in rials, but expenses have become dollars. We have no opinion about a possible attack. We are only stressed and worried about our families.
On the news, Iranians constantly hear threats from the U.S., and sometimes we hear that there might be an opportunity for negotiations. But what I see here on the ground, and also you saw, Iranians are tired, Iranians are exhausted, because now they are under a lot of economic pressure and also mental pressure.
U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff is expected in Israel Tuesday for talks with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Discussions will reportedly focus on the second phase of the Gaza ceasefire deal and tensions with Iran. Over the weekend, Israeli and U.S. naval forces held joint drills in the Red Sea. Well, that is it for this edition of The World Today. I'll be back shortly with more news from the continent in Africa Live. Thanks for watching. First ceasefire monitoring team due to arrive in the DRC's Uvira in the coming days. Sudan's Army and RSF exchange strikes in Kordofan region. And digital content creators in Africa call for recognition for their craft as full-time venture. Hello and welcome to Africa Live. As always, great to have you with us. I'm Richard Nta, live in Nairobi, and for those of you joining us from across the continent and around the globe, we thank you for joining us. Let's take a look at other stories making headlines this hour. Coming up in business, Ethiopia's economy projected to expand by more than 10% this year. And in sports, Tanzania's Azam United beat Kenyan side Nairobi United 1-0 in their CAF Confederations Cup tie. Once again, a very warm welcome to Africa Live. Let's begin with our top story. The UN peacekeeping mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo is preparing to deploy its first ceasefire monitoring team in the coming days, according to Qatar's foreign ministry. The team is expected to go to Uvira, a strategic city in the east that was recently retaken by government forces after the M23 rebels withdrew. Qatar says both sides have agreed on terms for the monitoring mechanism under a previous ceasefire deal, signaling progress in Doha-mediated negotiations. Separate U.S.-led talks between the DRC and Rwanda are also underway. This latest push to activate ceasefire monitoring comes amid persistent fighting in the east, which has faced decades of conflict, which has caused ongoing instability and a worsening humanitarian crisis. Let's get more of this. For more of this, we are now joined by our correspondent Chris Ochemringa, who is live for us in Kinshasa. Chris, welcome to the program. Welcome to Africa Live. Thank you for joining us. Chris, first and foremost, a ceasefire monitoring team is due to arrive in the eastern town of Uvira. What more can you tell us about its mandate, duration, and operations? What do we know?
Well, Richard, the spokesperson of the United Nations peacekeeping mission in the DRC confirmed the deployment of UN peacekeepers in the eastern city of Uvira in the coming days. She said that they are carrying out preparations to deploy the troops and declined to divulge more details about, the duration and the operations, how it will be going on. But what we know is that the peacekeepers will be deployed there to protect civilians, which is their core mandate. Last month when M23 rebels were pulling out of that city after getting a lot of pressure from the United States, they wrote a letter to the United Nations Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, asking him to send a neutral force to protect civilians in that area, particularly the Tutsi community known as Banyamulenge, who they said were at risk of being attacked by the Wazalendo militia, who are a group that has been fighting alongside the DRC army. But the DRC dismissed that allegation, saying that they are not targeting any civilians in Uvira. They are only fighting against the M23 rebels who have illegally occupied territories in eastern DRC, as well as the Rwandan forces, despite UN Security Council resolution known as 2773, which called on them to stop the offensive and the Rwandan soldiers to withdraw from Congolese territory. So we're expecting the United Nations peacekeeping mission to make a statement about how this deployment will be carried out in the next coming days. Richard?
Let's talk more about that important background for our clarification there. Thank you so much. Now, this will be the first team deployed by the UN, Chris. How is the government in Kinshasa reacting to the developments, and what are the expectations, most importantly, on the ground?
Well, authorities in Kinshasa are very supportive about this deployment. President Felix Tshisekedi has been traveling around the world in conferences, calling on the international community to come to their rescue to stop this conflict that has gone on, since late 2021. thousands of people have been killed and millions others have been displaced. And they're saying that this is an economic war, that the rebels have been targeting their minerals and exporting them through Rwanda to some of these European countries. So any kind of assistance, support by the international community is very welcome in the DRC to end this conflict. I also spoke to some people who are close to government officials who declined to be named, and they said that they are hoping that the UN peacekeepers carry out their mandate very effectively, because, you know, about 4 years ago there were concerns, a lot of criticisms against the United Nations peacekeeping mission. The people were saying they were very slow in reacting to some of these attacks. They were not protecting people in eastern DRC, and that was one of the reasons that the DRC government asked them to pack their bags and leave. But then as the war intensified, there was a sudden change of heart from the DRC government, and just last December the mandate of the UN peacekeeping mission was extended until 2027. So many people are hoping that this deployment will restore peace in eastern DRC. We're waiting to see how it turns out.
All right, Chris, let's hope for the best. Chris Ochomoringa speaking to us live from Kinshasa. Thanks for that. Still in the DRC, drones carrying explosives targeting a strategic airport in the northeast were intercepted over the weekend, according to provincial authorities. Now, officials in Shopo province said 8 drones were neutralized between Saturday and Sunday before reaching their target in Kezangani. No casualties were reported, and the government says the situation is now under control. Kisangani's airport is a key lifeline for the city, which relies heavily on air transport. The facility is also used by the Congolese Army. No group has claimed responsibility for the attack. And to Sudan now, where the Army and the Rapid Support Forces exchanged strikes in the western and southern regions of the country on Monday. And that's according to a Sudanese military source and eyewitnesses. A drone strike hit the town of Dilling in South Kordofan state, where the Army recently broke a siege by the RSF. The strike hit a building housing the government's humanitarian aid agency. Dilling and Kadugli have been on the front lines of the fighting since the earliest days of the war in April 2023. Around 80% of the population, some 147,000 people, have fled Kadugli, according to the UN. Now, as the UK takes over the presidency of the UN Security Council this month, the country's charge d'affaires to the UN has announced that the conflicts in Sudan, Gaza and Ukraine will dominate the UNSC's agenda in February. James Karuki said the crises in all 3 regions are among the most serious threats to international peace and security across 3 continents.
The brutal conflict and humanitarian disaster in Sudan remains an urgent priority for the United Kingdom. We're working tirelessly, using every diplomatic tool at our disposal to push the parties to agree a ceasefire to end this devastating war. That's why we'll use our presidency this month and the mandated council meeting on Sudan on the 19th of February to focus on the desperate need to alleviate the suffering, protect civilians, and end the catastrophic fighting.
And still in Sudan, the ancient Red Sea port town of Suwakin is on the verge of a rebirth. Persistent conflict in the country has left a shell of a town, but now it has been injected with funding for reconstruction from the British Council and UNESCO. CGTN's Wilkester Nyabwa with more.
Suwakin attracted tourists who flocked here to see its unique ancient buildings and architectural designs made of coral stone taken from the seabed. The port embodied the rich cultural heritage of the Artega tribe, part of eastern Sudan's Beja ethnic group. For centuries, Suwakin served as a transit point for merchant caravans and Muslim and Christian pilgrims traveling to Mecca and Jerusalem.
The town had the first port during the Ottoman era, and all houses were built with 3 floors during that period. These buildings witnessed various types of colonialism, whether British or Egyptian.
In 2017, then Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir granted the port to the Turkish government under a 99-year lease for tourist development. In 2019, the restoration journey stalled after Bashir was overthrown. But since, the British Council and UNESCO have stepped in.
When we finish the restoration, the tourists can come here and also share and invite other people to come here. So the place itself is a historic building, a tourist place for the tourists also. They can come and see the Sufi songs and music using drums. So it is a good place for the tourists to come here after we finish the restoration, maybe after 5 or 4 months since now.
We keep the heritage of this city special, Sawakin, because the architecture of this city have most amazing architecture and decorations in all of the city. So we work hard for keep all this.
Currently, Sudanese transport company TACO operates daily crossings, carrying around 200 passengers per trip from the modern port of Suakin within sight of the ancient city and its decaying environs. Wilkis Anyabwa, CGTN.
Well, let's turn to Ethiopia and the northern Tigray region, where Ethiopian Airlines has resumed flights there days after services were suspended following clashes between regional and national forces. Tensions have been mounting in the volatile region, where fighting was reported last week, 3 years after the November 2022 peace deal ended a civil war between the Ethiopian National Defense Force and the Tigray People's Liberation Front. The African Union has called for dialogue, urging all parties to exercise maximum restraint as the fighting fuels fresh anxiety of renewed conflict. Now, over 2,500 digital content creators from 15 countries converged on Lagos, Nigeria for this year's African Creators Summit under the theme, Building a Sustainable Ecosystem, where Africa trades its swag. They called for their craft to be recognized as a full-time venture and not just as a side hustle. CGTN's Wilkis Nyabo with more.
In a world of rapid digital and technological advances, content creation has evolved by leaps and bounds. And at the African Creators Summit in Lagos, these creatives highlighted the overarching demands of their craft.
If you look at, as a content creator, having to work with like multiple platforms, like 4 or 5 platforms joined together, having to post on different platforms, create videos for different platforms. I feel like it's not something that you can just say, oh, let me be doing this and also be doing content creation also. It's not possible. You have to like put your whole mind, effort, you have to put everything into content creating. And if you look at it, anything that pays can be called a job.
Others stress that content creators should think of themselves as small business owners.
About 40% of creators still think of it as a side hustle, and that is one of the reasons why the industry is not as mature as it is. So the industry has to get to a point where creators believe that this is something that they can do full time. And so I believe within the next few years, you're going to see more people who are doing this thing full time as their main job. They will quit their 9-to-5s and focus on this, because again, this is like building a small business.
They also called for the monetization of their art. As part of the theme, swag stands for sound, walk, attire and grabs, which they said form the cultural pillars behind the continent's growing global influence.
Content creation has helped me to pay a lot of bills, and it also helped me to see it in the light of as a career, as a long-time journey, because there are a lot of things about content creation. People just see that getting in front of the camera, acting and all that. There are script writers, videographers, editors, sound guy, and producers.
The summit also focused on sustainability within the industry, with speakers highlighting different levels of creators and the challenges of moving into top earning brackets.
The top tier is where everybody's trying to get to, right? They say you want to be that person that your content feeds you. But if you do your life right, your life is the content. The work you do is part of the content. For me, I'm into sports, right? At my core, I'm a sports journalist, but most of the content I get to reproduce comes from a sports, entertainment, and educative space. So if I am not doing these things already, where would the content come from?
The African content creator economy has grown rapidly in recent years, driven by social media, video streaming, and increased mobile phone use across the continent. Wilkis Anyabwa, CGTN.
Well, let's turn to wetlands conservation in South Africa's Retvlei Nature Reserve, a critically endangered conservation site protecting diverse wildlife while also serving as a water source. The wetland is a protected habitat for residents and migratory bird species. More than 180 bird species are in the nature reserve, many relying on the wetland for breeding, feeding, and shelter. The Leonard Gill Museum, located within the reserve, showcases preserved specimens of local bird life, offering visitors insight into the different species. Retvlei is recognized internationally as a Ramsar wetland of importance, underscoring the reserve's environmental value and the need for continued conservation.
I come here more for the fact that the hides are very nicely close by to the water, so you can get close up to the birds. If you haven't got the hides, the birds are sort of quite far away. And then your photography, I just do photography as a hobby, and I just enjoy photographing the birds. But the hides make it easier, yeah, to get closer to the birds.
Essentially, I'm into the birding. This particular location, I came to specifically to see pelican, also to see the painted snipe. Wasn't lucky today to see it, but essentially that's why we came out. And then just to enjoy the wetland overall.
And in Cape Town, local officials hope to protect the rich biodiversity of the city's wetlands through community involvement and skills development programs. CGTN's Travis Andrews brings us the details.
Cape Town's False Bay Nature Reserve is a unique ecosystem of rivers, marshes and wetlands, including Zeekoevlei and Rondevlei, which are both recognized as a part of a crucial Ramsar conservation site. A number of bird and fish species inhabit this area, and the City of Cape Town, as well as the national government, aim to promote the reserve as a cultural heritage site.
Wetlands are certainly a very, very important ecosystem, and we're very proud to be here on World Wetlands Day, partnering with the City of Cape Town in recognizing this particular wetland area, and also recognizing Cape Town and Western Cape's contribution to the Ramsar Convention. There are 12 out of the 32 wetlands that we have in South Africa that are within the Western Cape.
Consisting of 6 parts, the reserve also houses a bird sanctuary, which was established by bird lovers and community members. However, like many other wetlands in South Africa, it is susceptible to human encroachment through development along its periphery. While the Western Cape is home to 12 of the country's unique wetlands, they are still affected by issues such as sewage pollution, which comes as a result of urbanization. Community members involved in the conservation of those wetlands hope that something can be done about the ingression of sewage.
We would say at this point in time that Zeekoevlei is probably about 15-16% full of sewage, right? And we really need some action to get that resolved to save this Ramsar wetland.
In the future, Cape Town plans to do an in-depth study into the levels of sewage pollution and what effects it has had so far on the wetlands ecosystem. Travis Andrews, CGTN, Cape Town.
Angola and China have marked the Lunar New Year with a major cultural celebration in Angola's capital, Luanda, highlighting growing people-to-people ties. A Chinese New Year temple fair drew thousands as officials from both countries pointed to deeper cultural cooperation in the year ahead. CGTN's Joy Krukijuma has more.
Color, music and tradition filled the streets of Luanda as a Chinese Lunar New Year temple fair brought together cultures from across continents. The 2-day weekend event was co-hosted by the Chinese Embassy in Angola and the Incombota municipal government of Luanda province. It drew nearly 10,000 people, including members of the Chinese community, Angolan residents and visitors from different walks of life. Guests were treated to Chinese cultural performances and traditional foods, with many saying the fair offered a close look at Lunar New Year customs. Chinese ambassador to Angola, Zhang Bing, noted that 2026 has been designated the China-Africa Year of People-to-People Exchanges. He described the temple fair as the first cultural event under that framework and said China is ready to expand cooperation with Angola in cultural exchange, youth engagement and talent development. Angola's Minister of Culture, Felipe Zhao, and Incombota Mayor, Milka Kakuse, were also in attendance. The mayor said cooperation between Angola and China has produced tangible benefits and thanked China for sharing its tradition with the Angolan public. She added that Angola is keen to deepen exchanges and strengthen people-to-people links. Organizers and participants alike expressed hope that cultural activities like this will continue, strengthening mutual understanding as ties between the two countries grow. Joy Kirukijuma, CGTN.
Time now for a bit of news from the world of money. Here is our business segment. Coming up in business, Ethiopia's economy projected to expand by more than 10% this year. And SpaceX acquires XAI in record-setting deal, the most ambitious merger in tech.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. You've got to get out, go there, and you'll find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca, among the crowds in Cairo.
We come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
Along the waters of the Nile, along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Welcome into the world of money. Ethiopia's economy is forecast to expand 10.2% in 2025-2026, higher than the finance ministry's projection of 8.9% given in June. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed said this is based on a review of the growth performance over the past 6 months of the current fiscal year. The East African nation, which is restructuring its external debt, is implementing far-reaching economic reforms backed by an International Monetary Fund loan program. Meanwhile, a key investor group in Ethiopia's Seoul International Bond says it's planned to take legal action after the country's bilateral creditors blocked an initial agreement with the government on how to restructure the debt. Last week, Ethiopia announced it would reopen negotiations with investors on the terms of restructuring the $1 billion bond. This is after the official creditors committee, chaired by China and France, said that the draft deal did not meet the comparability of treatment principle under the G20 restructuring initiative. And Sudan Airways completed its first flight to Khartoum International Airport since the outbreak of war, offering tickets at reduced prices. Now, in a statement, it said the first flight from Port Sudan to Khartoum Airport was a reflection of a return of spirit and continued connections between the people of the nation. The airline said the flight was offered at promotional rates of $50 as part of commitment to serving citizens and easing travel burdens. Sudan Airways resumed flights to the Egyptian capital, Cairo, and Jeddah in Saudi Arabia on January the 20th from Port Sudan International Airport after finishing maintenance in India on its only aircraft. It continues to face significant challenges, though, including the loss of its fleet and a ban on flights over European Union airspace. The carrier also faces administrative and financial challenges as well as technical constraints that have affected its competitiveness and overall reputation.
We announced the commencement of operations at Khartoum Airport with sufficient capacity for this phase, and we assure all citizens, airlines and stakeholders in the aviation sector in Sudan that we are ready to carry out our operation tasks from Khartoum Airport so that we can fulfill the assigned role in serving the Sudanese traveler and the Sudanese economy.
Now the airport is 100% ready to receive all internal flights, and soon it will be ready to receive international airlines as well. The extent of the damage at the airport is huge. we're talking about big and unimaginable numbers that cannot be easily calculated in an accurate way.
It's such a beautiful and wonderful feeling. We can't believe what happened. We can't believe the Sudanese carrier is back and we are on board here to Khartoum. And we wish everyone the best of luck.
African leaders are calling for rapid industrialization to achieve the goals of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. Business leaders and policymakers met in the Ghanaian capital Accra for this year's Africa Trade Summit. They examined how African economies can move beyond raw material export and build competitive industrial value chains. CGTN's Nabil Ahmed Rufai reports.
The African Continental Free Trade Agreement, or AFCFTA, is in its 5th year of operation. The agreement aims to open the market for 1.3 billion people on the continent for cross-border trade. But 5 years on, some analysts are concerned that not much has been achieved.
We've still not witnessed much when it comes to services, and it's of great concern. Services under AFCFTA. And that carries the bulk of the money. That carries the bulk of where the Secretariat can do well, or the agreement can do well.
The trade summit held in Accra sought to find ways to step up implementation of the Continental Free Trade Agreement.
We can no longer accept an economic model that consigns Africa to exporting raw materials and importing finished goods. That model is a neo-colonial arrangement that is designed to trap Africa in perpetual poverty. It is important for Africa to industrialize.
But there are also concerns about the lack of trade financing, especially for small and medium-sized enterprises to scale up their production. Another issue analysts want governments in Africa to tackle is the growing insecurity on the continent, especially in West Africa.
If you look at this last year, still a lot of volumes were not made with respect to the AFCFTA trading, because we had a lot of instability in some of the regions. You recall, the Burkina Faso and the likes, and so you realize that a lot of intra-trade was a bit short-circuited.
Leaders at the trade summit now want to mobilize financing for industrialization to boost intra-trade. They believe this could help lift millions of people on the continent out of poverty. Nabil Ahmed Rufai, CGTN, Accra, Ghana.
In the Eastern DRC, a vital lifeline is stirring back to life since the army retook South Kivu's Uvira city after the M23 rebels withdrew. For almost 2 months, the port was closed to traffic, but now boats are once again docking at the key port of Kalundu on Lake Tanganyika. CGTN's Najma Abdir-Razak explores what this means for communities dependent on the port.
The port of Kalundu is South Kivu's main connection to the outside world. But for more than 30 days, the port has stood virtually paralyzed. No boats, empty quays, and trade frozen, leaving hundreds of workers in forced unemployment. But in recent days, vessels have begun docking once again as traffic gradually returns to the waters.
This is the official reopening of traffic on Lake Tanganyika between Uvira and Kalemie, Uvira and Bujumbura, Uvira and Kigoma, and Uvira and Mpulungu. I can confirm that traffic has begun and work is already underway. From Kalundu, you can access Bujumbura. You can also access Kigoma in Tanzania, and from there you can go to Mpulungu in Zambia.
Uvira's economy is opening up along with the port. Weeks of closure left markets empty and desperate, driving up prices and squeezing families. The city depends heavily on lake traffic for everyday essentials, from food and fuel to building materials. For port workers, the blare of boat engines is a welcome sound after months of instability.
A boat arrived today from Kalemie, the El Shaddai. That's why I had the courage to come to the port to do the work that feeds my family. We no longer believed we would see a boat dock here at this state port, but God is good, and He allowed our soldiers to return here to Uvira and liberate the people of Uvira from the rebels. We praise God.
There are small boats that come here. Each week we might see 5 or 6, and sometimes even 10, coming to sell their products. During the time the rebels were here, there was no traffic, and the port was closed. So there was no way for these boats to come in. There are also ships that dock, but they couldn't come in either. Why? Because there was no traffic. They couldn't come because traffic on the lake was closed.
Kalundu's return signals a small but vital step towards stability in eastern DRC and a relief for the communities that depend heavily on cross-border trade. Najma Abdirizak, CGTN.
Elon Musk has announced that SpaceX has acquired his artificial intelligence startup xAI in a record-setting deal that unifies Musk's AI and space ambitions by combining the rocket and satellite company with the maker of the Grok chatbot. The deal, first reported by Reuters last week, represents one of the most ambitious tie-ups in the technology sector yet. It combines a space and defense contractor with a fast-growing AI developer whose costs are largely driven by chips, data centers, and energy. The transaction values SpaceX at $1 trillion and xAI at $250 billion. This could also bolster SpaceX's data center ambitions as Musk competes with rivals like Alphabet's Google, Meta, Amazon-backed Anthropic, and OpenAI in the AI sector. Disney shares took a dive on Monday despite the company's first quarter revenues beating forecasts. Two smash hit movies and bigger profits from its streaming services were offset by concern over the impact of the U.S. political climate on visitors to Disney's theme parks. Owen Fairclough has more.
From Avatar 3 to Zootopia 2, two Disney movies that gross more than $1 billion and help propel the company's first earnings of 2026.
Partnership is the cornerstone of success.
The Zootopia sequel broke box office records internationally, including in China, where it's the highest grossing Hollywood movie ever released. And that kind of milestone helped Disney's first quarter revenues grow 5% to $26 billion. Streaming income grew by 72%, partly driven by higher subscription fees. And its experiences division that includes theme parks and merchandise generated a record $10 billion. But if those headline numbers look good, Disney's overall profitability is down. Its share price dived in New York on Monday as investors digested modest income growth for its US parks due to what Disney calls international visitation headwinds. In other words, fewer people visiting the US amid international backlash over the Trump administration's immigration policies, now embodied by deadly protests in Minneapolis. That arguably increases the value of overseas markets like China. And during his visit there last month, Disney chief executive Bob Iger pledged continuing investment. Owen Fairclough, CGTN, Washington.
And we're not done just yet. We've got your sports segment coming up. Let's take a look at those headlines. Coming up in sports, Tanzania's Azam United beat Kenyan side Nairobi United 1-0 in their CAF Confederations Cup tie.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
Well, welcome into Sport on Africa Live. Let's talk a bit of football, and we'll start with African football and the Kenyan Premier League, where the Nairobi United suffered their fourth straight defeat in the CAF Confederations Cup group stage against Azam FC of Tanzania in Zanzibar Sunday. Azam started with a lot of pressure, taking the lead after only 12 minutes of play through Faisal Salom. They should have doubled their lead in the 18th minute when Jepte Katambala tried to sneak it into the net, but keeper Kevin Odor reacted quickly to make a superb save. United's first chance came in the 39th minute, but the Azam defense reacted just in time to calm the situation. The hosts continued to dominate in the second half, but couldn't get a second goal. Nairobi United now lie bottom of Group B after the 1-0 defeat. Now, here are the results, though, from other matches played over the weekend. And in the Saudi Pro League, a Sadio Mane goal was enough for an Al Nassr side missing star striker Cristiano Ronaldo to overcome Al Riyadh. The Portuguese superstar was reportedly on strike, according to Portuguese media, over a dispute with club owners Saudi Arabia's public investment fund over transfer strategy. But Al Nassr still cemented their second-place spot on the table with a victory over their city rivals. The game had 3 disallowed goals, all for offsides, with Mane's goal being the difference. Ronaldo's stance, though, elicited mixed reactions from Al Nassr fans after the match.
What Cristiano Ronaldo did, we stand with him. This is what a good leader does. If he didn't take actions like this, the problems with the fund's management and the club's management wouldn't be addressed. What he did will help resolve the issues related to the fund's management. This is a form of protest, and we support him as a leader. We stand behind Cristiano and say to him, keep going, we are with you.
If we look at it from a professional standpoint, it could be considered an unethical move. But in the end, he did it for the benefit of his club. Hopefully, things will calm down, and we wish Saudi Arabia and the Saudi League all the best.
Italian biathlete Rebecca Passler has been suspended after testing positive for banned substances days before the start of the Milano Cortina Winter Olympics. The Italian anti-doping agency said in a statement that the 24-year-old had tested positive for letrozole and methanol. This is the first positive test of an athlete since national teams have started arriving in the northern Italian city for the February 6th start of the Games. Passler, whose best result was 11th in the women's 4x6 kilometer relay in the 2024 IBU World Championships, now faces disqualification from her home Olympics and potentially a lengthy ban.
Well, the ITA, the International Testing Agency, would probably refer the case to the CAS Anti-Doping Division for a decision as to whether the athlete should be provisionally suspended or not. That would be the only question put. But obviously the athlete has the right to request the analysis of the B sample, so it may take 1 or 2 days until we get the case. And the lab must also give the documentation to the ITA. So technically ITA comes to us for a question or request to determine whether the athlete should be suspended for the duration of the Games or not. The CAS-ADD will not decide to impose a suspension. This is something that the Federation should decide if there is a judgment of guilt. So we deal only with the problematic for the Games.
Still on the Winter Olympics, the Olympic flame traveled to Lombardy to mark the 57th day of the Milano Cortina torch relay. It continued the journey across the northern Italy, starting in the late morning in Villa d'Alma and Porta Anica, then passing through Alzano, Lombardo, and Nembro and Sariete. The flame arrived in the early evening to a celebration event in Bergamo. International Olympic Committee President Kirsty Coventry visited the Olympic Village in Milan and even had time to interact with an intelligent robot from China. Located in the southeast Milan, the village also welcomed Milano Cortina President Giovanni Malago, as well as members of the IOC Executive Board and IOC Athletes Commission. Coventry noted the transformation of the village since its construction phase. The group then proceeded to an exhibition hall featuring displays from various Olympic partners. The first woman IOC boss then showed interest in an intelligent robot developed by a Chinese partner. IOC member Zhang Hong, an Olympic Council of Asia Athletes Commission chair, and IOC Athletes Commission liaison Ding Ning were also there. Coventry, meanwhile, also toured the athletes' residential zone.
I'm thrilled. This is also my first visit to the Olympic Village here, and I came together with the IOC president and the executive board to meet athletes and take a tour. Over the past 8 years, I've done a lot of work on the IOC Athletes Mission and involved in many Olympic-related initiatives. I believe this is also the approach I hope to pass on to many young athletes to give them more confidence, whether they are active or retired, to keep striving and unlock more possibilities for themselves. I also wish Chinese athletes the very best in showcasing their top performances.
China Media Group's outside broadcast studio in Levingo will go live for the first time on Friday and will bring full coverage of snowboarding and freestyle skiing throughout the games. The studio has had to tackle the challenges of mountainous terrain and unpredictable weather with a fully domestically developed 4K EFP system. This as it aims to deliver clear visuals of the snow-covered slopes while maintaining operations in extreme cold. A dedicated display features 4 Zodiac-themed Bing Duen Duen mascots representing the journey from Beijing to Milan, and warm colors. A simulated fireplace and comfortable seating hope to create a welcoming environment for athletes.
For this broadcast, we used our latest domestically developed studio transmission system. It's a 4K ultra-high definition EFP setup featuring a mini camera, a rail-mounted camera, and 2 remote control cameras, ensuring smooth studio operation and stable broadcasting.
Now let's take a closer look at the medals for Milano Cortina. They are identical in size, each measuring 80 millimeters in diameter and 10 millimeters in thickness. Both gold and silver medals weigh around 500 grams. The bronze weighs approximately 420 grams. All of them are produced entirely from recycled metals using renewable energy. The brand identity and look director for Milano Cortina explains the design.
It is, but it is also the two halves that bring the athlete to the medal. The medal is something that the athlete never wins alone. There is always somebody supporting the athlete. It's the families from when they were children. It's the coaches, the physiotherapists, and it's the fans that have been following the athletes. Having a design that is clean with this very essential concept really gives the possibility to the rings to stick out and to be important. And on the back, we have the name of the discipline that will be different for each discipline, and of course the Milano Cortina emblem.
Well, that is it for this edition of Africa Live. Remember, you can send us your feedback to the contacts on the screen and follow us on digital media platforms. For the team, I'm Richard Nta saying thank you so much for watching, and I'll be right back in the seat again in 6 hours' time with more Africa Live. So stay tuned and stay here on CGTN.